It is officially June, so that means Justin Tucker and Marcus Williams contracts are off the books. We'll take a look at where the Ravens now stand with their salary cap, and we'll look at some remaining free agents at some positions of need to talk about where they could potentially spend some of this new money. All that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Before we get into today's episode, I am going live tonight with the Purple Rain podcast at 7 o'clock, so I hope to see a lot of you guys there. If not, you can always just watch the replay, but back to going live and got some guests on tonight, so looking forward to that. Hope to see a lot of you guys there. Now let's get into these updates. So Brian McFarland at Ravens Salary Cap posted today that with Williams and Tucker now removed from the Ravens salary cap, the Ravens are now $18.488 million under the cap. This is a pretty large number, but it's also a little misleading because we still have some upcoming cap adjustments and some future expenses. Mike Green still hasn't officially signed, so when he signs, that will come off the books. And then there's some future expenses as well, including filling out the practice squad. So the projected effective usable salary cap space after everything is handled is $5 million. So the Ravens still have a lot of flexibility this offseason because they could still clear a lot more money. We've been talking about it for months now, but you always could extend Lamar, you could restructure Lamar, you could restructure Roquan, you could restructure Mark Andrews. I know he's a free agent next year, but so is Marlon Humphrey, and they just restructured his deal a few months ago and just added void years and basically cleared 15, 16 million in cap. You could do that. The Ravens could restructure Nnamdi Madubuike. They could extend Odafe Owe and clear a ton of cap. So there's a lot of options for the Ravens to clear more cap if they want. Or if they stay put, they got some room to add a few more cheaper veterans like a John Jenkins signing that they just had. And John Jenkins, by the way, officially signed today. So he is now a part of the Ravens officially and can enter OTAs if he wants to be there. So it's pretty exciting to see that they have 18 million in cap room, but after you look at the future expenses and count in the practice squad and all that, it's definitely not that much. You know, it will be around 5 million, but with the ability to clear so much more cap room, I think the Ravens have freedom to be able to add anyone they want. If they want to get super aggressive and go after someone who costs a lot more, they're able to do that. If they want to just keep filling out their depth of their roster and adding a few vets for cheap, they definitely can do that. So with how stacked the Ravens roster is, this is a very deep roster. I know some fans are like, oh, the Ravens are being cheap, and I don't think so, not this year. You know, the Ravens are not being cheap. They've added so many void years onto contracts to be able to keep this flexibility. I mean, we signed Ronnie Stanley and added void years to keep his cap hit low. We restructured Marlon Humphrey's contract to clear a ton of cap room and added void years onto that. We added void years onto the DeAndre Hopkins deal, the Tylan Wallace deal. I mean, pretty much every move the Ravens are doing this offseason is adding void years, which is an aggressive spending mentality. That's an aggressive strategy. And they're doing that so that they can maintain flexibility and keep a really stacked roster. So I think other seasons, you could say the Ravens are being a little cheap. You know, they're always spending up to the cap, but I know what you mean about like going overly aggressive. You know, the Eagles add more void years than anybody to be able to pay A.J. Brown and pay Devontae Smith and still go out there and get a free agent. And the Ravens are doing that this year. They have been doing that. They've been clearing a ton of cap room, and they still have cap room because of all that aggressiveness with void years. So I think the Ravens are spending more and being more aggressive than they have in recent years, and I think they realize that their window is going to, you know, stay open with Lamar, but this combination of Lamar and Derrick Henry isn't going to last forever. You know, you got a great window right now. You got young receivers on cheaper contracts. Take advantage. And maybe they don't get more aggressive and they just kind of round out the roster with some veterans. We'll take a look at who's available in a second. But either way, I think this roster is ready to go. You could just add a few veterans at some positions of need, and I think you're ready to go, and maintaining flexibility into the season is also an advantage because you never know what position group could just get eliminated with injuries. I mean, you could think you're deep at one position, let's say tight end, right? Like we're stacked at tight end. But if Mark and Isaiah Likely go down, all of a sudden you're not feeling as good about it. So you want to maintain flexibility to be able to continuously make moves. So the Ravens might not go, insanely aggressive and go out there and trade for Jalen Ramsey and take on a contract like that or something. They could just round out the rest of the roster with vets and maintain that flexibility. Okay, now we can clear some cap with Lamar's contract, extend him, restructure the way it's done this year and clear some cap room and go make another move because we desperately need this position right now to keep us competitive. So we'll see how it plays out, but the Ravens are sitting with $18 million in cap space right now and really $5 million in future usable cap space, but still, I think this is a great position for how talented this team is. The Ravens put themselves in a great spot. But let's take a look at some free agents that are still available because I think now that the Ravens have got these other contracts off the books, they can officially make some more moves if they want. So we'll start with inside linebacker. I hope Trenton Simpson steps up and is a reliable starter next to Roquan, and then we could just, have Teddy Buchanan in the mix or Jake Hummel. But there's also some risk there that maybe those younger guys aren't ready or doesn't work out fully. That's what happened to us last year when we put Trenton Simpson in that role. So there's no guarantee. I think inside linebacker is still a position that we could add to. And some free agents that are still out there at inside linebacker. The biggest name's probably CJ Mosley. We all know him pretty well. Eric Kendricks is still out there. Jawan Bentley, Devondre Campbell, Quan Alexander. There's a bunch of solid vets that could bring a lot of necessary experience to that room. Let's also take a look at guard. I think this is one position that we can always continue to add some competition to. Brandon Scherf, biggest name still out there. Shaq Mason, Will Hernandez, Dalton Risner. I wouldn't be shocked if these guys sit around for a little bit if the Ravens decide to bring in some more veteran competition to the guard room. Looking at free safety, there's Marcus Williams still sitting out there. Definitely not bringing him back. But Justin Simmons has been a name that's been tossed around quite a bit. Jordan Whitehead, Julian Blackman, Quandre Diggs, Jordan Poyer, Chuck Clark. And then looking at corner, there's James Bradbury, Kendall Fuller, Stephon Gilmore, Razul Douglas, Asante Samuel Jr. There's a lot of free agents out there at some positions of need that I think the Ravens can still add to. I don't know if it'll be right away, but they might see how camp plays out, see how mandatory mini camp plays out, maybe into training camp, and then just see kind of where they're at with the young guys and what position they might need to bring more experience into. If we did bring back Jadeveon Clowney at edge, I think that could be later in the offseason when they might not love what they see from David Ajabo or, Adisa Isaac or whatever, but I'm hearing good things from those guys. So I think that the edge room is pretty full, but it never hurts to bring in some experience if needed. So they might let the young guys go out there, battle it out, show the coaches what they got, and then be like, oh, hey, we need to add to outside corner, or we need to add another safety, or we need to add more guard competition, whatever it is. I think there's a ton of free agents out there, and it's not like the Ravens isn't a destination that people wouldn't want to go play for. I think if they made a call, most of these guys are going to be like, yeah, I'll come play for Baltimore. So the Ravens kind of got a ton of options, a ton of freedom with this new salary cap room. None of these guys are going to cost a lot. But that's it for today. Let me know what you guys are thinking about everything. Who would you sign? What moves would you make with this money? Hope to see you guys at the live tonight at 7 o'clock. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. The Flock Rundown. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.